The Switch 2 is a big upgrade from the first generation of Switch hardware. But if you're looking to get into the Switch ecosystem now, or if you've got an original Switch and you're wondering if you really need to upgrade, this video's for you. Here are what I think are the 5 biggest upgrades from the first Switch family and 2 downgrades that I think you should be aware of before you plop down your $450 or more to get a Switch 2. First up, I think I can count the number of times I played Switch 1 in tabletop mode on like 2 hands and maybe a foot. Basically, it was how tired was I on a plane trip? Did I feel like I could hold on to that thing, or did I need to put it down on the tray table? Otherwise, it was like 85% TV and 13% handheld mode for me. But the Switch 2's hinge and top USB-C port make tabletop mode a bit more interesting now. The bigger screen also makes it more appealing. With the Switch 1 and even the OLED screens, they just weren't big enough to make me want to put this thing too far away from my face. And the first Switch's kickstand was such a joke, I really didn't want to use it. I had a stand that I would put it on. It not only gave me more flexibility, but it let me charge it while I played. The Switch 2 has charging ports on the top and the bottom, and a great kickstand. So maybe on my next flight, I won't even hesitate about putting it in tabletop mode. At number 4, you just can't overstate how much better the operating system runs. You can say it's a bummer that it feels so similar to the original Switch, but like a lot of the Switch 2's formula, they're kind of going for an if it's not broke, don't fix it sort of thing. The original Switch eShop was brutal. There's hardly any organization. It ran slower than the guy who got run over by a steamroller in Austin Powers. And on Switch 2, it works the way you think it should. When it loads, it's done loading. When you click on something, it opens right away. And videos play if you linger on items on the main page. Yeah, this one's not sexy. Honestly, maybe it's more of a Switch 1 complaint than a Switch 2 achievement. But you will notice if you upgrade. I've got some genuine praise for the Switch 2 at number 3. I love the new Joy-Con. I'm not going to use them over a Pro Controller when I'm on my couch, but using the system in handheld mode is no longer a non-starter for me. Nintendo also nailed the magnetic attachment to the main body. It's actually kind of fun to take them off and put them back on. It's way more satisfying and less rickety than the Switch 1's rail system was. The buttons are bigger and less cheap feeling. The analog sticks feel smoother. Now, they don't use any tech that would make them less prone to stick drift, which is good, because we need something to complain about, right? Next up, the under-the-hood improvements and the extra oomph original Switch games have to work with on Switch 2. There are a few things behind this point, and yeah, maybe it's also the most obvious one. New hardware, better guts, software runs better. But in new Switch games, you see 24 drivers in the new Mario Kart game. Cyberpunk 2077 has a very credible port, and upgrades for some Switch 1 games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom unlock better frame rates and play so much better. Some Switch 1 games are getting patched with less fanfare than those Zelda games, but honestly might have even more impact. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet actually work now. So do the other 2 Zelda games from Switch 1, Echoes of Wisdom and Link's Awakening. All 4 of those games actually had pretty noticeable graphical problems on the first Switch. Like, maybe they were expecting some kind of mid-generation spec bump that never came, and, well, they didn't get bailed out by it. But it's better late than never, and Switch 2 is a great place to play most of your Switch 1 library. But the top reason to upgrade to a Nintendo Switch 2 from an earlier Switch is the screen. It's huge, and honestly, it's what made the upgrade worth it to me as a day one adopter. So many devices like the Steam Deck had bigger screens than the original Switch, and this was kind of imperative for Nintendo to pull off. I think in 2017 there was maybe still some concern about portability, but let's be real, no one's putting a Switch in their pocket. So what we want is a nice, big screen, and boy, Switch 2 delivers. It's actually a better screen than I would have guessed on paper. 1080p with variable refresh rate. Nintendo says it does HDR, which was hard enough thing to notice on a really good display. I don't think the Switch 2 display is good enough for you to notice it here. But if you're coming from an original Switch or a Switch Lite, this screen will blow you away. And it might make you want to play in handheld mode more than you ever did with those systems. And yeah, I'm including the Switch Lite, which was handheld only. So there are the 5 biggest upgrades from the first Switches to Switch 2. But life's all about trade-offs. And there are a couple things you should know if you're going to go into the deep end of the Nintendo console pool. Starting with that screen I just told you about, but really only if you're coming from an OLED Switch 1. It's not as good. That OLED screen was great, and you will notice a drop in color vibrance and black levels because LCDs just aren't OLEDs. For me personally, I was still overwhelmed by the size of the new Switch, so I didn't see a gigantic drop-off. And every reviewer that mentions this will also say, now don't worry guys, Nintendo will eventually sell us a Switch 2 OLED. And they might be right about that. But let's think about it for a sec. The Switch 1 OLED came out 4.5 years into that system's life, September 2021. So that would be holiday 2029-ish if the timetable is the same here. Things are already expensive. The Switch OLED was 16% more than the original Switch. Do that same math, and the Switch 2 OLED would be $525. Sound like fun to you? And that brings me to the biggest downgrade from the original Switch. Everything is so much more expensive. I'll let keyboard warriors tell me why, but it is. $450 for the console, $80 for Mario Kart, $85 for the excellent Pro Controller, micro SD cards where you're lucky to pay less than $60 for a reputable brand to get 256 gigs of storage. It's a lot. And right now, as we look into the rest of the year, a lot of the biggest Switch 2 games are also launching on Switch 1. We saw this with Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, where the games straddled generations for years after they came out. So what do you think? Are the upgrades worth it? Do you have a Switch 2? Are you happy with it? Let me know, and we'll chat about it in the comments. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you want my thoughts on the Switch 2 at launch, including the games, check out my review.